everybody. Welcome to what is going to be an informative and fun webinar and Q&A all around coaching. What is a coach? I mean, we all probably had coaches growing up on the field, but what is a coach? What is an executive coach or a leadership coach? It's a word you hear a lot today. So I'm excited to have as my guest Kristin Kobey. She is a product and leadership coach and certified, which is going to be important. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But welcome to the program, Kristin.
Thank you, Chris. I'm excited to be here. Thanks.
Oh, it's great to have you here. So let's just start off with this, right? Um,
Yeah.
you hear the term coach is something that's sort of bubbled up, I think, in recent years in particular. It's a word you hear a lot, but I feel it's sort of amorphous, whereas who is a coach? What does a coach do? Like it seems like it's something that they're like, oh, I need to know more about this because it seems like almost anybody could say they are a coach. So why don't you tell us real quick, like, set the table. What does an executive and a leadership coach do?
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, you're right. Anybody can say that they're a coach. And that's part of why this is, a little bit confusing for everybody to find their way through and understand and try to figure out if it fits for them. But there is certification, and there are ways that you can become a certified coach and go through a lot of education and training and so forth. So we'll kind of get into that a bit. But yeah, fundamentally, what does an executive and leadership coach? Well, that's the other part of this that's funny is there are also many, many types of coaches, right? There are life coaches, there are sports coaches, there are coaches for almost anything, transformational coaches, health coaches, and so forth. So executive and leadership coaches are really more zeroed in on, who you are at work and who you are around your work, right? So it can go into the personal space as well, but it's oftentimes about how are you developing as a leader? How are you developing your skills? Where are your gaps? What kind of awareness do you need to build around that? And then turning some of that insight into action. So leadership coaches will focus on, career clarity, confidence, helping you build purpose in your career and where you're going. Executive coaches are very similar, but might be focused on on an executive level, on a C level, and leadership, and dealing with some of the helping their clients deal with some of the stuff that comes with like leading giant organizations and strategic initiatives and stakeholder management, board management, and so forth. So the core of it, though, is all the same. All of us trained certified coaches kind of build off of awareness, choice, and transformation. So helping you become aware of what you're really good at, what your gaps are, where you want to be, and helping you realize that potential through kind of seeing choice, if that makes sense. So, what can you do to build those insights about yourself of where you want to be, how you want to be in the world, and then help you map a plan to get there, right? Coaching is very action oriented. It's like awareness, insights, and actions are really what we're hoping for, and then building over time. I'm not sure if that answers your question about it, but
No, no, that's really great because I think it sort of gets down to like you don't know what you don't know kind of thing. And like if in previous job searches, I've always felt like, oh, I would be lucky to have a job rather than they would be lucky to have me. And I didn't really plan for things, right? And it's not
yeah.
thinking, I'm thinking more like what's next rather than 10x, right? Like what's a bigger way to think about my path forward, right? And so it sounds like what you can come in as like sort of this outside influence that doesn't carry the same baggage and biases that I already have towards myself and really free up to think about other possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's kind of like, where are you at right now? Where do you want to be? And then how will you get there, right? I kind of think of it like your own personal leadership retreat, if that makes sense. So, it's not vacation, right? It's like taking some time for yourself away from your day to day, which is such rare time for us in our busy lives, right? Making that time and space for yourself, finding a guide, a coach, that kind of can help you build that awareness and insights and actions in that time, and kind of having that retreat away from your day to day to your point, pop way out, kind of look at your bigger picture. Where do you really want to be? How do you structure that with intention? How do you start to build that out into steps? How do you measure those steps for yourself? That's the kind of stuff that you do. So it's sort of like I don't know, it's like your own little retreat from the day to day, and you can do it without, booking an expensive vacation, although that's nice too.
So when does somebody kind of come across the realization that they need a coach? And as you
Yeah.
deal with clients, right? Like at what point do I go like, oh, I should probably get some help?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it comes about in different ways, right? Like if you're in a work environment, sometimes there will be coaching in your environment, and and especially at an exec level, it might come along with it. So you might already be aware of it. But usually, when people come to it, it's because there's some level of change they want to make. There's some kind of awareness. They can't quite get to it. They can't quite scratch the surface of what's holding them back. They know something is, so it's really kind of um, that crossroads, so to speak. Like, I want to do something a little different. I want to see something different in me, or I want to find purpose more in what I'm doing. So there's a lot of questioning, internal questioning, that brings people often to coaching. And then there's a second step of that where there's also some awareness. Like you might be building that self-awareness in different ways, but you want some structure to it, so
Yeah.
you want to work with somebody to kind of structure that. So I always think of it as like, I know I need coaching when, and coaches get coaching, by the way. So I know I need coaching when I'm kind of like stuck on something, and my normal methods of kind of resolving that for myself might not quite be working. I can't quite see it clearly. I'm too in my head. And
Yeah.
so I'll go work with my coach, and talk about that. I'll also go build a framework with that coach about how I can leverage some of my own skills. Like for myself, I'll also go on a walk because that'll help me clear it up. But you know what I mean? It's sort of that area where you're like, this is big. I'm in some kind of change, and I need a little bit of guidance on that.
Yeah. Well, let's roll into that next. So you just said you get coaching, right? And then
Mhm.
you offer coaching services, right? But what does a typical coaching session look like? You mentioned something like a framework, right? So let's say I've
Mhm.
decided, oh gosh, I need help. I'm going to contact you as a coach to help me figure out either, leadership, executive, kind of whatever. Is it career path as well, or how do the two tie together?
Well, that's a great question because they all tie together for us, right? So oftentimes we'll come thinking on the surface that it might be a career, like, you said earlier, like, how do I move into the next career stage with intention, right? But it also could be deeper than that. So it's career, it's leadership. I think of leadership, and I think most coaches do, in a broader sense. Like, how am I leading myself forward in the world? How am I leading my teams, my family? Sometimes I'm telling you, coaching can come in handy with you, just how you approach your family situation too. So it can be career, it can be leadership, it can be personal development, all
And
that's
so,
rolled.
okay, so once I guess you've defined that with a client,
Mhm.
um, what does a typical coaching session look like for you? It's a Zoom call, I'm presuming, or how does it work?
Yeah, it can be. It can be in person. It can be Zoom. It can be on the phone, which actually can be really impactful too. Not
Yeah.
being distracted by seeing ourselves, just listening. But it can be in any of those ways. And actually, sometimes I even do coaching sessions on foot. Like we get outside and we walk, and that's actually a really great way to free it. But it's basically about creating the container, right? What is that space that we feel comfortable working? You and I feel comfortable working together. What are our rules of engagement? Confidentiality is king in this, right? So it's like, really creating that safe container of space, whether on Zoom or out in the world, where we can explore together. So most coaching sessions have kind of an arc to them, right? So, you'll typically, and we're taking this from kind of we've already established a coaching relationship.
Sure.
We should talk about what it means to start a coaching relationship too. But let's say we've established one. We might take the first 10, 15 minutes to check in. Where's your energy at? How are you feeling? What's going on right now? Might clear out some stuff that's just bugging us. You just vent a little bit. Might even check in on homework or assignments or things that we talked about last time, that check in and how did that go. Then we'll kind of land on the topic, so to speak. Like, what do you most want to work on today? Like, what would be most important for our time together today, and what would success look like coming out of our talk today together? So we'll kind of ground ourselves on that. And then we'll spend a good majority of the time exploring that. So a big part of coaching is exploration, right? It's creative exploration. It's me listening very deeply, not in our one-on-one conversational listening, but listening with context more broadly around you, hearing things you're saying, and then, asking powerful questions, digging a little bit deeper, trying to understand what's holding you back, what's driving you forward, and so forth. So we'll explore together that topic that you're bringing, and then we'll start to see like insights coming out. Like you'll have a lot of aha moments, right? Like, oh, you know, I didn't actually think of it that way, or oh, I could do this, and then you start to see the action starting to come out. And then we'll start to refine towards the end of that session those actions and start to land on some accountability, right? So, okay, what would you like to do with that? What would be a step forward you could take with what you just uncovered? How can I help you be accountable for that? And that's where we'll set up at the end kind of, is there a homework? Homework is such a, weird term, but is there a reflection, an activity, an assignment, something that you want to kind of practice that reflection and insight, take that deeper, and then we'll kind of close out from there. Does
Do
that
you,
give you a good sense
yeah,
of the
I'm just
arc?
wondering, like, how formal is it? Like, do you have workbooks that people do? Do you have, like, are there, like, I think the first thing that comes to mind, even though it's totally sort of wrong, but like in school, they have things like IEPs, right? Like individual
Mhm.
education plans or whatever, right? And so do you map those out for people as well? Like, what is sort of something like tactical that people might expect when working with a coach?
Yeah, it's a great question. And all coaches, and this is part of when you're seeking a coach, ask them these very questions, right? What's your framework? What physical artifacts do you create? What exercises and so forth. For me, I tend to mash up product thinking and product tools and activities along with my coaching capabilities and coaching skills. So I'll come up with, I typically will help a client build out their client canvas, so to speak, sort of like a lean canvas for your business. This is sort of your client canvas for yourself. So we'll start to capture, after some of our explorations, we'll start to capture some of that in like a physical, I use mural for this, like a physical mural board. I don't tend to lead with, like, I'll give some thought prompts ahead, but I don't tend to lead with worksheets and workbooks, because you kind of skip right through to the action. You don't really get to uncover some of the insights and awareness part, if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
we will usually follow up with something that they can then capture. It might be a reflection, it might be a writing exercise, it might be, if it's like, if I'm coaching somebody, for example, on finding that right next job for them, it might be, hey, go out and write your own ideal job description, right? And then share that with me, and I'll give you some thoughts and feedback on it. So it really depends, but absolutely there are, at least in the coaching work I do and most that I know, there are some, physical, usually bespoke kinds of exercises that come along with that create their broader plan.
There's a difference between when you're up to speed, and when you're just
Hmm.
starting. So maybe
Yeah.
talk, like, for when people just start, like, here's, I want to ask just like a very tactical question, which
Hmm.
do you operate on like is it like a therapist where you're just like on a weekly retainer kind of, or, a weekly schedule, or do you bundle up a certain number of, what's the typical relationship that a coach might have, just in terms of like the actual meetings and how that's set up?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a great question, and you're not going to love this answer, because I'm going to say it kind of depends.
Well, that's all
But
right.
typically, it does follow that kind of structure where you will meet, either every other week, weekly, monthly. Typically, at the beginning, it's nice to meet every other week, at least, to start to really build momentum. Um, uh, s- uh, some of that will be, you might enter into a coaching package, for example, that's kind of focused on a certain area. For example, like I run a productize yourself coaching package that has kind of an arc over 8 to 10 sessions. And so that's a little bit more of a fixed goal and a fixed outcome, and kind of led a little bit more. But then there's also a lot of wide open coaching, in the sense of, it's like, I hate to say like therapy because it's similar in some ways, but very different in others. And I'll talk about that in a second. But building relationship and awareness over time and having that um, coach kind of guide client relationship um, is really applicable to all types of situations, right? So you might come in and decide you're going to get coached for a month on, getting through a conflict you have at work. But usually when you start to talk about that conflict at work, there's something under the surface. We kind of call it the iceberg, right? The conflict is the tip that's outside of the water. And then there's usually stuff that's going on in patterns that we have, self-limiting beliefs that we have, and so forth, that we want to work on and apply in other places. So I know I'm not completely answering your question directly, but I think a typical coaching engagement to start with might be every other week for a couple of months to kind of start to build that action plan, those insights, that relationship, those action plans. And then it can go. I have some relationships, client relationships that go for like 3 to 6 months, and then some that go for longer, a year, and then some people who come back after, they go and they work on what they've been doing, and then they find new things that they want to work on, if that makes sense. So but yes, you get into a regular cadence, like an hour, usually like an hour every other week or, every month, and go from there.
Okay, so I want to talk a minute about the letters after your name when you have them on LinkedIn. It's the what are your letters and what do they stand for?
One of my letters. I know it's all confusing because there's so many letters, so many acronyms, right? Like
Yeah.
always, like everywhere. For coaching, there are some specific ones that so so I'm a LPCC ACC. So the broader umbrella there is the ACC, which is an associate coaching certification, and it's given by it's earned and given by the International Coaching Federation, which is sort of the gold star standard in um, coaching, right? So the letters to really look for when you're looking for an executive or leadership coach are typically ACC, PCC, or MCC, all all stepped up levels. So the ACC means that I've had 60 educational units, at least 100 hours of coaching, and I've passed a certification, and I've passed like a knowledge test, a very hard one at that, a knowledge test. I've had mentor coaches watch my coaching sessions, obviously with permission and so forth. And I passed a lot of coach training and coaching education to get to that point. PCC is 125 hours of educational credits and 500 hours of coaching. And then a MCC, a master coach, is 200 educational hours and 2,500 coaching hours. So if you're working with an MCC as an executive coach, you're working with somebody who's been really doing this for a really long time, is really highly skilled, has seen many patterns. They might even be an author, they might be an author
Yeah.
out there, or they might be leading huge trainings at companies and so forth. Yeah. So different layers for that. Now the LPCC part of it is my leadership and performance coaching certification that I earned as I was working towards my my ACC. I earned that from Brown University. So I took an 8-month, usually the coaching programs are no less than 8 months. So 8-month coaching certification program in leadership and performance specifically. So my training is the coaching base applied with the leadership and performance in a workplace, or leadership and performance over your own, development kind of standpoint, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
so I don't know if that's answering your question, but usually,
No,
just to summarize it,
that
it's like learning and getting credentialed in one kind of coaching, and then getting certified by the ICF.
so I think a good takeaway for people here who are looking or thinking about getting an executive coach is it's that International Coaching Federation, right? Like they may not even realize that there is a sort of, for lack of a better term, like a governing body, a standards body that is
Yeah.
overseeing. And so having those letters can be helpful for somebody who doesn't know where to begin, because then at least you have some level, you have like a level of endorsement and training to become a coach.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't know if that's you or me breaking up there a little bit, but
Oh,
absolutely. Like if you see anybody with an ACC, any ICF certification, they've gone through a lot of really like deep training to be in that, to be doing this work. And there are specific capabilities, skills, and so forth that you learn in order to do it. So it's not just a conversation. It's actually a coaching engagement, which is very different. It's diving deeper. It's knowing how to listen. It's knowing how to ask the right questions and apply the right frameworks and so forth. So, yeah, look for that. If you're looking for an executive coach or a leadership coach, or really honestly any kind of coach, look for ICF certification because it is known as the gold standard in certification. And like I said earlier, anybody can call themselves a coach. It's not like therapy in that way. Like you cannot call yourself a therapist without being a licensed therapist. Anybody can call themselves a coach. But if you've got, if you see those letters, and you can actually go on the ICF website, International Coaching Federation website, and search for find a coach, search for coaches to see their certification, you know that they have passed quite a few training hurdles, tests, assessments, and so forth to get to the place that they've gotten to.
okay. So let's actually start with that, or not start with that. Let's go to that real quick. If someone is interested, where should they start? Is the ICF a good place to start? Or like just I mean, you always personal recommendations are always probably preferred, right? But what are some good places for people starting at zero?
Yeah, starting at zero, I would like the first place to start, honestly, is with yourself. Like, what do you want out of a coaching engagement? Because, like we talked about, there are many different pathways that you can go. So, what do you want most? What are you trying to develop? Once you're clear on that, kind of look around you, talk to people, right? Um, for example, within your company, they may offer coaches, some amount of coaching along with it through BetterUp, through Lyra, through, there are all these different partnerships now with coaching platforms. So you might look to see if that exists. Definitely go to the ICF website. They have a find a coach, right there at the top, and you can do searching. You can search by more than just their level of certification. You can see what they kind of specialize in, and you can go look at them online, right? So most coaches have some online presence at this point. They have a website or they have a LinkedIn, or, so go look and see, once you get some of those names, go just kind of check out what are they saying on their website? What do they say they specialize in? Where are they focused? So it's really kind of putting feelers out, talk to people, get recommendations or referrals from people, and then talk to coaches. So most coaches will have an option for you to do a free discovery call or a free conversation, because we want it to be a good mutual, partnership, right? Coaching is a partnership. So we want to know too, we want to work with you on, do we seem like a good fit, or is somebody else actually in my coaching network a better fit for you? So our goal is really always to be in the client's agenda, right? Like to be in service of the client. So if we don't see ourselves as being the best match, we might also say, oh, I might not be able to do this, but I know somebody great. Let me get you their name. So it's really putting those feelers out and listening and using some of the tools that are out there to look. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I mean, I think it's in a world where anybody can call themselves a coach. I think it's really important for people to figure out what's important to them. And one way to do that, is if certification is important, starting with the ICF and going there, at least you are going in. Doesn't mean that you're going to find the person you need there, right? But it gives you a place to start.
It
And I
gives you a
think
place
that's
to start. Yeah.
I think that's really important. Um, and uh, how long? Well, I guess we kind of talked about this a little bit, but yeah, your relationship, the coaching relationship it really just sort of varies on the individual. It sounds like,
Hmm.
right? Like whether they have sort of a short-term thing, but that you talked about the iceberg, and but that could extend over a longer period of time, like a couple of years, depending on how deep they want to go. I'm just trying to think of somebody going in at the risk of being impolite. like what can people expect to pay for something like this, right? Like
Mm.
like is it in the again, I'm not trying to pry to or get to like or be
Well,
rude,
it's a
but I'm just
complicated
trying to get
answer.
a yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, by that, so like, are they looking at a retainer per month? Or maybe we can just start it there, right? Like, are we looking at usually a monthly retainer? Or I know you talked about you productize with the boot camp, which we're going to put a pin in real quick. But I just am trying to think because I think about like whether I hire a personal trainer or something, right? Like there's a cost associated with it, and somebody just may not understand like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
they should expect to pay $1,000 an hour, or you know what I mean? Like it's I think just an understanding that you are engaging in a service, that service costs money. Um, a coach would tell you not to put yourself on sale. So, you know,
Yeah.
what are just some things that people should go into just so that they're better prepared and don't get like shocked when the
Yeah.
time
No,
comes to answer that question.
I think it's a good question to talk about. And the range is very broad on it, right? I mean, I think somebody can expect to seriously expect to pay anywhere from 100 to $1,000 an hour, right? Like that's how broad it is. But some things to look at there. So it'll be based on experience. So a lot of times, something we haven't talked about right quite yet is what comes in along with your coaching experience, right? So oftentimes people are experts or have built up um, their own expertise in a certain area, whether it's they've been in the C-suite before and they know how to help support executives, whether it's somebody that in my case I've been leading product for 20 years, so I bring that into the mix, and I really I help beyond product people, but I can really speak the same language and have a lot of experience to bring to the mix. So I might be an expert, so to speak, in that area and get paid on the higher end. A lot of coaches also will work on like on either retainer or packages as well, right? Like you might have the sticker price of the hourly, but you might also, if you decide to commit to trying 8 sessions together, it might come down in price. So I would just say the best thing to do is don't get sticker shock, because I think it's really hard for people to figure out like how to pay for these things. Like like I'm not shipping like this amazing new pair of sneakers that exactly what the bottom, the price is and what the value is like, but it is a deeper value that you're really investing in for yourself, giving yourself time, space, reflection, awareness, and an action plan. And it takes some vision and seeing how to support yourself on that financially and with time investment as well. So take it really seriously when you go down that path. Look for somebody you trust, somebody who has experience in an area that makes sense for you. Um, and then bring all that to the mix when you look at the price together, right? So it's again one of those, like, it's really going to range. Another thing too is sometimes so I do some group coaching as well. That can be also a really great way to focus in on a certain area with peers and kind of learn from each other, and also have that be a slightly more affordable option for going, zeroing in an area together. For example, I coach a mid-career group around career clarity right now, and there are 10 people in that group, and we do a mixture of activities that help build awareness. We do networking together around that, and so forth. So that's also an option that people should be aware of as well. There's also group coaching, and then there's coaching within your organization. I always recommend, if you're within a company, to look and see if there are ways that you can get coaching through there. And then that, if I'm selling in as a coach, I'm usually doing a retainer with that company on
Got
a
it.
yeah.
All right.
So
That's excellent. I think this has been really great. You mentioned your product as you were actually doing a boot camp for OpenWater. Late. It's in May. It's in April. The
it's tomorrow.
it's tomorrow. Oh wait, sorry.
It's tomorrow.
Got too many things going on. And that is your productize yourself boot camp, correct?
Yeah, we're doing an intro to it. We're gonna try a little bit. It'll be pretty fun, and this is a great example of where you can focus in. So we'll be doing from a series that I do. We'll be looking at what does it mean to be a product? What does it mean to be your favorite product? You know, what would you solve in the world for yourself and others? And we'll do some things like maybe an ikigai and have a little fun with my reason to be and what I can get paid for and so forth. So we'll dive in there. But that's a great example of both having some structure there. So we will do some framework and then deeper dive together, and then having a group dynamic where we can learn from each other and then takeaways that you can work on your own.
That's great. And if people wanted to find you, do you have a website or something we can drive people to? I mean, obviously you're on OpenWater, so people can reach out there. But
Yeah,
where else might people find you?
yeah, I think that probably the best place right now is to find me. I have my own website, but I also have a partnership with a coaching partner, and I have a consulting, coaching, and advisory business. So teal-dot.com. Or you can look for me, Kristin Kobey, at .com as well. I have the one benefit of being the only Kristin Kobey in the world, so that should make it easy to Google me. And always just reach out. I mean, I deeply believe in the power of looking outside of ourselves and finding a good partner, coach, that isn't in our day to day, that doesn't know everything else going on, but has some real skills built up and being able to help you see and be your best, to help you like look inward and then structure outward, and to go on that kind of pathway together to create a purpose and vision for yourself. I believe that that work can be done really well with the right partner. So if I can help you find that partner, let me know, because it is one of my passions to help people see and be their best.
Kristin Kobey, product and leadership coach. Thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I love this. This was fun. Thanks, Chris.